I like our system. I like the strategy that was introduced prior to me being in my chair right now. I think it's the best way to do it. We do follow what's called the CMP, the Comprehensive Municipal Plan. That's a 10-year plan that has it's actually filled from the council table, as you know, as far as you want sports fields and more aquatic places, like a new curling rink, these sort of things. And we will create this plan, we will save our money, and we will pay for them. That way, we keep our taxes low, the lowest in the Fraser Valley. A good example is we have more artificial turf fields than GVRD. And the reason behind that is soccer for families and kids is a fairly inexpensive sport to get them off their computers and get them out in the fresh air and to work with other kids and just grow with the community. So yes, I do love the strategy and I'm going to stick with the strategy.
I think Chilliwack has been very fortunate over the years. We've had fiscally responsible governments, and one of the constraints that Chilliwack has faced is related to my question and answer one. We have a very limited industrial land base, and therefore we have a very limited industrial tax base that isn't enjoyed in Chilliwack as it is in other communities around the region. But what we have to do, more than just worry about the revenue side of things, we have to worry about the expenditure side. And one of the areas that I think that we can do better is looking at how we distribute, vital and limited public resources to achieve community needs. So my view, we've got the money, it's how we're spending it. It's not so much a matter of the revenue coming in as the priorities of how we're going to achieve the needs of the community in our spending. And I think we can do better with that.
I'd say I largely approve of the budget process and how they're planning and avoiding debt in the city. I would like us to consider putting some large capital spending to the ballot. I think it's too late for that for this election, obviously, but possibly in the next round, what things can we bring forward instead of building them in 5 years from now, or and then I guess it'd be 9 years from now, or well out in the future. What can we put on the ballot in 4 years when we go to the ballot boxes of bringing these capital measures forward to build things possibly with debt and putting that to the citizens of Chilliwack. If you want to see these things built quicker, we can take on debt and we can do so, but it comes at a cost. And I think largely Chilliwack has avoided those extra costs, which I think is a good thing. That's a good financial practice, but there may be things we want to bring forward.
Pay as you go has been a long-standing policy in the city of Chilliwack. It serves us well. Anywhere I go in my travels over the last 4 years where I get to interact and speak with mayors and councillors from other cities in the province, Chilliwack's in a position of envy that we have no debt. And why is that important? Well, having debt, which in my view is not a good thing, creates what's called a debt reduction surcharge or payment on your annual taxes. So your annual taxes as a residential homeowner go up. And why is residential taxes important? Well, it's really the building block for taxes for businesses and industries. Businesses and industries have what's called a multiplier. They pay a multiplier, which is times the residential tax rate. So if our tax rate remains low without debt reduction payments, our multiplier, which in Chilliwack is somewhere between 2 and 2.5, it is the lowest in the Lower Mainland, that continues to make us competitive when we attract and look to buy not only residents, but also homeowners and business and commerce and industry into our city. In Chilliwack, we have what's called a 10-year comprehensive municipal plan. And in that plan, and it's reviewed annually, it's an arm wrestle as we cajole and fight and push and defend our positions of what kind of projects are in the 10-year plan and how are they spaced out during the plan. And this is just one important part of the discussion. So what we do when a plan is in, say, the top three upcoming years, the city starts saving for it. So when the time comes for shovels to be in the ground, for the infrastructure in the building to start, we actually have the money in the bank to pay for the project. We don't go into debt. But what's equally as important is when you have the money in the debt and you're starting on a capital project, there's often opportunities with the provincial and federal governments for grants. Most of these grants come in you pay half, we pay half, or something similar. So by having the money in the bank, from the city's perspective, it's a much more attractive application to the province and the federal government for them to match the funds. Being in debt is not a good thing in a municipality. It raises taxes, and that has a cascading effect over everything we do and everything you do as a citizen.
So as a successful small business owner, I believe in measured and prudent spending. This is part of sustainable and responsible growth. I also feel that it's important to weigh rising land costs and construction costs and to consult with experts to make sure that we are moving forward in the best way. While I am definitely an entrepreneur at heart, I am fiscally conservative and responsible in my own business and will carry that forward into City Hall.
Well, you know, we're very fortunate that we are the envy of so many communities across this province. We save before we build the project. We live within our means. It's important to live within our means, considering the world we're in, the inflationary costs that are steadily increasing. We identify a project and we will save for it. Or if there's federal or provincial grant programs that come on, then we'll have that money saved so that we can stretch our funds. So it works exceptionally well, and my mindset is if it isn't broken, why fix it?
So the pay-as-you-go philosophy has worked really well for our city. As a council, we get together and we plan things 10 years in advance through our municipal comprehensive plan, and we allocate certain money into that plan every year so that when there's big ticket items that we need to spend on, we've got that money there. Often the federal government or the provincial government will come down with infrastructure programs, and if our idea fits their criteria, then we can stretch our dollar 2 times and sometimes even 3 times as far. So that's really getting the most bang for your buck. So the negative part of borrowing is, where do you draw the line? And with increasing interest rates, it's better for us to spend tax dollars on buying buildings, land, and services than it is to pay down debt and interest payments.
I think we can all agree that we shouldn't spend money that we don't have. That's just conservative fiscal position. And as a mom, that's how I raise my family. Nevertheless, businesses can't start with just a cash up front. Who's got that kind of money? Buying a house, you don't start with cash up front. You can't save $1.7 million to buy your first home. That's why we have mortgages, and that's why we have investment, and that's why we borrow. And cities are well positioned to borrow at a very low rate, repay rapidly, and they're going to increase the value of their assets and the equity to borrow against in the future if necessary.
I fully support the city's pay-as-you-go policy and would never change it. And I have a couple of reasons for that. Interest is just an expense with no benefit to a single person in the city. It is literally the only city expense that holds that dubious distinction, so why would we want to pay it? Secondly, borrowing is a vicious circle, and once the floodgates open, there's no turning back. The current council could probably name half a dozen capital projects that we would complete if we borrowed, and we could all say, that's it, no further borrowing. A few years down the road, we have an election. New council gets in, new priorities, and a list of capital items that they want to get done. It's now justified that because the previous council borrowed, the new council can borrow. And so it begins. And before you know it, interest is turning into a significant expense. We see it at the higher levels of government with no end in sight. My humble opinion, borrowing should be the last option we look at, not the first option.
Definitely being fiscally responsible is a big thing for all of our community. They need to know that City Hall is spending our money wisely. But what they do need is they need reassurance that what they're paying for, our infrastructure, our residential parks, and our commercial parks, all of our recreation is up to par. Moving forward from there, we also have dikes, sewers, waters, and policing and fire. So, in my opinion, as long as we're not putting any of our community at risk, this is probably a good plan.
Like any good policy, I think we need to look at it under the lens of the current situation, our current economic situation. I think we're pretty lucky not to have incurred any debt. I think we're pretty lucky that we've been relatively fiscally conservative at the city of Chilliwack, and that we take the taxpayer very seriously in their ability to pay. Now, that being said, I think reviewing policies year over year and under the lens of a new council would be a positive thing. I've been a director with the Municipal Finance Authority, and so if the city ever chooses to pursue financing opportunities, we have the ability to with very low-cost borrowing alternatives than regular opportunities that citizens would have. So if we do want to pursue borrowing opportunities ever in the city of Chilliwack, we have avenues that we can do so.
I agree and am grateful for the pay-as-you-go philosophy of the city of Chilliwack. I do believe that this pay-as-you-go philosophy helps us lean on our provincial and federal governments and the relationships that we continue to make with them. This helps to keep property taxes affordable for local Chilliwack residents.
I think it's important to note that the spending, the fiscal responsibility of the current council and mayor is great. I mean, they've done such a good job. I did learn, though, as chair of the Board of Education, that with the growth, we're going to keep growing. That's the fact, and we have to put in capital plans in the school district in order to get new schools. And if you put in a capital plan to the provincial government early, it's a bit of a risk because you could get declined, and then they tend to keep declining that capital project. So we had to take a risk to apply for those projects to get those schools built, and those schools are now being built. So in the same sense on city, it doesn't work the same way, but taking a little bit of risk to build a little bit of infrastructure, knowing that you know we are not slowing down in our growth anytime soon. So taking a little bit of risk to ensure that that infrastructure is there that we know we're going to need anyways. I think that I would be willing to do that, but I understand how you know, individual councillors maybe feel uncomfortable being the first one to say that. But you know, if we have the data and we've done our due diligence and we know we're going to need the infrastructure, then I wouldn't have a problem with investing early.